Your life is what you make of it. The people you let in and decide to trust. The ones you let go because they don't deserve your attention anymore. The dreams you choose to chase, the decisions that can make you happier. Even the small things can make a difference, and it'll become your journey, your life. Your personality has much to do with the way you deal with your everyday stresses and resilience, and knowing who you are will enable you to make better choices and build relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. I'm an ESFP, extroverted, love being out with people, sensing, enjoy all the details, feeling, harmony is really important for me, and perceiving, give me flexibility, please. I know where my shortfalls are in life, and although I don't always avoid them, I do wherever possible. Many years ago in the late 1990s, I was required to do the pays for 50 casual staff. Our paymaster was going on holiday, and unfortunately, I was the last man standing. I had a computer that was a dinosaur compared with computers these days, and as much interest in the job as watching paint dry. I locked myself away in a room so that I couldn't be distracted. It wasn't my usual job, so the paymaster had left me a very detailed list of instructions. Thank goodness, even down to push the green button for on. As I laboriously worked my way through, desperately trying to stay focused, someone came in and started talking to me. As an extrovert, it was the perfect moment. I was so bored and lonely, and I needed energizing. After a lengthy chat, he left. Re-energized and on fire, I finished the job. It wasn't until the following day that we discovered I'd overtaxed all employees' pays after my chat. Bummer. It was then that I said to my husband, "This is not me. I can't function in an environment of work that needs lots of structure and concentration." From that moment on, my work roles have been people-centred, flexible and fun, and I've never looked back. Think about your job. Does it suit your personality? If not, you may be working under unrecognised stress. If this is the case, maybe you need to reconsider your work. We spend so much time at work that, as the saying goes, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Today we're looking at the INFP's personality type. I, introvert, energised by the internal world. N for intuitive, big picture, loving innovation and change. Feeling, concerned with values and what's best for the people involved. And perceiving, flexible and loves to go with the flow. Remembering that we use all 8 preferences in the MBTI, but innately one of each pair feels more natural. So who is an INFP? They're also known as the mediator and the idealist. INFPs value authenticity, and they want to be original and individual in what they do. They're often concerned with meaning, and they search for the truth and the meaning within themselves. Keeping tradition holds little appeal for the INFP. They prefer to explore different values and ideas and decide for themselves what seems right. They're often offbeat and unconventional, but they feel no desire to conform. They'd rather be true to themselves than go off with the crowd. INFPs are accommodating, non-judgmental in their handling of others. They believe that everyone must follow their own path. And although it's important to the INFP to support other people, they may react strongly if they feel their own values are being violated. They dislike being steamrolled by people who insist there's just one right way to do things. The INFP's desire is for an open, supportive exchange of ideas. Whatever their choice of career, INFPs want to feel that their work is helping others. Many people with this personality type choose careers that are focused on service, such as counselling, psychology, teaching, healthcare, and social work. For these caring, supportive personalities, few things are more meaningful than seeing their work help change someone else's life for the better. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Personalities, Parenting and Partners. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. In this episode of Personalities, Parenting and Partners, we're looking at how you can create the life that you want. On the Myers-Briggs scale, one of the personalities that embraces this idea is the INFP. How? Let's find out. Today we're talking to Belle Ryan. Belle's an INFP. She's an art therapist, counsellor, lecturer and director of her company Ignite Art Therapies. Belle's been designing and facilitating programs for over 20 years. She's worked extensively with vulnerable people in many diverse settings, cultivating self-awareness, understanding, learning and self-empowerment. Her recent focus has been providing safe place for leaders to consider how to be great leaders for the good of others. Hi Belle, welcome to the show.
Hi Kate, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Look, we were talking the other day about what we see as our greatest gifts, which we're often unaware of until we grow into them or understand them ourselves. And as you know, getting older, we tend to either understand things better or we don't understand them at all. So what kind of adult superpower do you have that is your greatest gift?
I think my greatest gift is being able to be present with people and to actually have them express their human experience. So whether that's in my personal life or professionally, people feeling comfortable with me to be able to talk about, share, express what is actually happening for them. And as a little child, I remember knowing things about people or seeing things that other people didn't see. And I thought it was wrong. But what I've actually come to realise is that that's actually a real strength of mine and why I'm in the profession I am, and really helps me every day with everything that I do.
So as a child, not being able to recognise that, how did that impact your childhood, like growing up and understanding that you understood more about people almost than they did?
In some ways, because I'm introverted, I kept it to myself. Yes. But it was a real sense of not really fitting anywhere because I had a recognition that other people didn't see things the way that I saw them. But generally, it wasn't something that impacted me hugely, but there was a sense of I'm a little bit different and I don't quite fit the mould, as they say. But I've come to realise over time, and as I get to know myself and do more self-development, which is something that I'm into as well as provide, it's made me realise that it is actually a strength and something that is just part of who I am, and I can't deny it.
No, because often what is our great gift or our superpower, so to speak, can be a problem when we're younger or something that we don't actually see and we don't recognise and we don't think is great. And it's really sad that sometimes we have to wait until we're older to find out how good we are.
Yeah, I remember a time when I said something about someone and my grandma was like, oh, don't be rude, don't say those things or that type of thing. But I think that was just more of being polite and me not realising that I shouldn't say things that I see that others may not.
Yes, and back in those days, we didn't discuss all of the more intimate things about people and the understanding that we had about people. It was to be seen, not really heard, I guess, in that respect.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you were young, did you have a dream about where you would be in life, what you wanted to do, lots of dreams or one dream, anything like that?
One of my 3 older siblings were at boarding school and I quite often used to play schools by myself. So I have an innate teacher in me. But as far as dreams, I remember being in my adolescence, I thought I would want to be a youth worker or a nanny or a teacher, those sorts of things sort of came up. And then filmmaking actually became the thing that I wanted to do. And that really embraced my creative side, but also that sense of the way I see the world. And I think that's what came out. So I did actually study filmmaking when I first went to uni, but one thing led to another. And now I tell people stories, but just don't film it.
Right. And when you went to uni, you did filmmaking. What else did you do while you were at uni, or what else have you studied through your life?
So one thing leads to another, as it always does. So I have a master's in counselling as well because I couldn't get work and then was working in a school. And what actually happened was a lot of adolescent boys in particular would come into my office and offload because it was a non-threatening space. I wasn't the school counsellor or that type of thing. So I decided that I needed to study that. And then I always did things a little bit differently and in an innovative way. And I discovered that art therapy was a thing, and that made everything make sense because we talk in symbolism and express in so many different ways. And so, I met a person who was the lecturer at art therapy, and then that led. So I've done a lot of study in counselling and the human condition, and I've always been fascinated with people. So that's where I think the filmmaking started that, because I love watching documentaries and am fascinated with people. I was one of those children who watched 60 Minutes because I love the people. And people's stories. So that, I think, is innately in me, and the career path has shifted a little bit, but it's still all about people and creativity and how we see the world.
So when you were doing your, before you came into art therapy, what other areas did you work in before you actually started into that kind of course? Were you with youth? Were you with people with mental health problems? What areas were you in?
Well, my mum worked at this school, and because I wasn't employed, she dragged me to work one day, and I left there 12 years later. So, but what it was I was, working, it was with adolescents, so year 10 to 12, so senior secondary school. And as soon as I got over into the school part with the young people, I'd found my place. And I did lots of things in that role, like organising school events. It was a Catholic school, so, I got really creative with the school masses, and, there was so many different things, and it was a really dynamic role. And, so I'm one of those fortunate people who hasn't worked many places because I stayed there for a long time. And
you obviously loved it.
Yeah, and I was really fortunate that I need challenge and change as well, and I constantly found that there was a new project to work on and things to do, and ended up, before I left there, I was running the Year 10 personal leadership program, so facilitating small groups and, helping them be better at their life. So that's sort of the focus, and that's sort of where I sit now, but work more with adults rather than young people.
Yes, because I was going to say that's exactly what adolescents really need now. I mean, everybody does need it, but it would have been wonderful for you as a person if you really connected with those kids to be working in that place, because it is, the kids out there really need that type of thing these days.
Yeah, and I've also done lecturing. Like, I've trained a lot of psychotherapists and art therapists, and even the way that I teach is really creative and different and humanistic. It's really about the experience. So I think everything that I do, if it's too structured, I get nervous and I don't feel comfortable. But also if I'm too creative, like I know there's a balance between the two as well, but I've always been that hands-on, let's get in there and experience it and learn from doing as well.
And do you find that even people, so with your art therapy, and running your courses, do you find that there are people that come into those courses quite constrictive? Because I'm really not a creative person, and I might go into something like that with you and think, oh, I'm not going to be cutting up bits of paper and doing this type of thing. So how do you get past those people that have those barriers? And tell me all about what you do in your art therapy.
So the wonderful thing is that those people who don't like doing art and think they're not creative are actually the perfect people to be doing it, because it's not about creating art to go in the art gallery. It is for reflection, insight, and expression. So, it's really interesting when I sit in a room and people have just come out of their office and they're all in suits, and then next minute we're doing some really playful, creative things. And what it actually does is take them into a different space and allow them to see the world differently and express that. So, I will quite often address it. I call the elephant in the room because it's like, who's really nervous when they heard that I'm an art therapist, and there's a lot of hands that go up. So it's just about addressing it and saying, that's not what this space is about. So if you can let your mind be on hold for a little while about, your year 3 teacher who told you that you weren't good at art, she doesn't need to be here today. So it is about how do we express and have a look at things differently. So design thinking is something that has come to the fore at the moment. And for me, that's a natural way of working, that thing of seeing the possibilities, having a look at things from all different perspectives and seeing that I just use art as the tool. And yeah, it's about symbolism and metaphor and people being able to talk about things that they wouldn't normally be able to talk about through the art.
I was going to say, so in those workshops, when you're doing that type of thing, what kind of things come up and out of it? So if you set an activity, how do you draw things out of people through that activity? I mean, what are they doing that puts them in a frame of mind that they're going to be discussing more personal things and things about themselves?
Yeah, so it depends on what the focus is for the session. So quite often in workplaces, I won't make it too personal because that's not comfortable for everyone, and I want to keep people safe at the same time. Where someone who comes and sees me out of choice, they have, they're ready for that more personal approach. So for instance, I did a workshop with an organisation and they use construction materials, so like pipe cleaners, corks, cups, you name it, there was stuff there. And they had to create how they thought the organisation was going. And so one of the groups together, so there was something happening in the actual construction where they were working together and team building at the same time. And one of the groups built a house that was on fire.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how they described. And there was a light at the end of the tunnel that sort of sat alongside it. And they were like, our focus is on the fire, not the light at the end of the tunnel. And so their boss was in the room, and afterwards, I mean, we did do a process with that, but they were able to talk about things that they can't talk about because it ends up in conflict and things happening. But through the symbolism and metaphor, they were able to talk about that. And in actual fact, the next part of the process was, well, what happens with the fire and what do you do with it? And they rearranged it and put in reinforcements in the house to stop the house burning, but the firemen came in and, there was this big story that happened with that.
Yes.
And what that did was actually highlight, okay, this is how we are, but this is where we can get to, and these are the things we need along the way. And so it's like the symbolism and metaphor highlights the things, and then they go into the practical elements. Okay, well, what are the firemen in our organisation, and how do we actually put those fires out or prevent them from happening again? So it provides a space to talk about things that are hard to talk about, but it's in a fun, light way as well, and then provide an opportunity to find those solutions as well. So it's really powerful and reflects life back.
That paints a magnificent picture, as you say, and it does create a talking point and I can understand that. So they've presented it, but it's not really, we haven't got enough workers and you're not really doing the right thing by us for the boss. It's really just paints a picture for something for them to talk about. Have you had any other cases like that you can talk to us about? Because that's really interesting.
There's probably thousands that I could talk about, but that's just a recent one that comes to mind. But also when I work one-on-one with people, there is metaphor and symbolism that is more personal when powerful.
Yes.
So for someone to recognise the block or the big barriers that they have in their life, and build that. So for instance, a client a couple of weeks ago built a big wall out of clay, and it was like, we can't get through it. And so we talked about how this block was so big and so overwhelming that they couldn't do anything with it. But then they discovered they could break it down piece by piece. They could probably put a hole through it and crawl through. They could walk around it. They could create a ladder to go over it. So there was all these metaphors that sort of happened for them to go, okay, there is solutions here. That none of them are easy. And I can somehow find a way. But at the moment, the block is just so in my face. But by externalizing it and having a look at it in a different way, they could see that there was something in their life that they could change and work through, even if it was just a little bit at a time. Yeah.
But that's fascinating, because I would never, when someone mentions art therapy, I would never visualize what you've just explained for us. And I think that the way you're explaining it is really great, because for most people, people listening, it's really something that I think the world's not been ready for a long time.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love is I've been doing a few conferences where people just scribble out their feelings that they're holding on to. And it is really powerful to see a room erupt of people just going, you're giving me permission to do this. And then what they do with it, sometimes there's paper planes flying across the room and people ripping things up and changing it as I take them through the process. But what's really powerful about that is that people are giving permission to do things in a different way. And that's what I really love about it, is that we don't know where you're going either. Let's just see what happens. And the outcomes are amazing. And yeah, people think about art therapy and think about the art, but when they actually experience it, it's so dynamic and works in so many different ways that's the bit that I really love, that it's not me standing at the front of the room with a PowerPoint telling you a concept. You are discovering that concept yourself, and the stuff that comes to the surface or is unknown and then becomes known, that's the real power.
And what's the kind of feedback you get from that? Do people come up to you afterwards and talk to you about what's happened with them?
Yeah, definitely. So the first time I did a big room, so there was about 350 people in the room and about 100 online, I could not believe what people got out of a 15-minute process. Like, it was just, the stories were incredible. And that's what I love. It comes back to that innate thing within me of loving people's stories and what makes them tick and what's happening and what do you do with that and how does your experiences make you who you are. And I love those stories. And, you know, I've been doing art therapy for probably 15 years with one-on-one clients, and I'm still continuously amazed at where people go and how the art holds their stuff and informs them and lets them let go and find what they need to find. Yeah, it's incredible.
And as you said to me the other day, that even though you might be seeing people that really need help, that you get such a kick out of it at the end of helping somebody that it just leaves you so happy.
Yeah, it does. It gives me a real buzz because holding a heavy space for some people is a real privilege, and I don't take that for granted. But also the times I get emotional is when people break through and find their strengths and discover the good about themselves. That's the stuff that makes me really emotional and uplifted. But the sense of wonder and let's walk together and see what's going to happen is something that I really love, and where people go is amazing.
So emotionally, is there an outcome for you from these workshops, apart from being, you know, so satisfied with them? Is there an emotional outcome that's not as good and that you need to share yourself? You know, they say counsellors need someone else to talk to. So how do you download and what kind of activities do you do so that you can get your head out of that space for yourself?
Yeah, so if I've come to know, and a question that I ask people is, how are you and how do you know? And I need to do that for myself because we all have signs and symbols, signs and red flags that we sometimes listen to and sometimes we don't. Yeah, so I know for myself, for instance, about a month ago, I had a client session that was really heavy and I could feel it in my body because I said I really feel things as well. And so after they left, I actually did a process on myself that I needed. There was some content in there that was sticking to me and I knew it wouldn't move. And so I did that. So I do my own art therapy practice as well. But I go and have supervision. So it's where every therapist that you see, you should ask them, do you do supervision? Because what that is a counselling session myself to talk about my clients. So that's a really healthy process, and actually ethically I need to do that. I also have my own psychologists and therapists that I see when things are tricky, but the problem is that because I feel so much, it can creep up. So I need to be constantly aware of my own what's happening for me. My life is still happening at the same time. That gets put on hold for the sessions that I do and the workshops that I do, but I am a human being as well. So I need to be aware of what my wellbeing practices are as well and what I need to do. And sometimes that needs to be cranked.
Yes. Sometimes
it's that I need to just have a day at home.
Yep.
It might be that I need to connect. I go for walks on the beach. I need to move my body. But I do daily art at the moment as well, just to sort of zone out and reflect. So I try and practice what I preach. It doesn't always happen, but I've had a couple of episodes of burnout and I've got post-traumatic stress from some incidents. So I need to be really mindful of my own stuff as well so that I can hold the space for others, and I don't pack my calendar too full for that very reason. So if I know I'm about to have a heavy day, I ensure the next day is an admin day. So I work my schedule knowing. So if I have a big talk as well, I'll make sure the next morning I don't see any clients. So that's a really powerful and really important part of what I do, because I do feel so much.
Yes.
And how do I create that boundary and that buffer so I can be the best for my clients and the people who are doing the work with me?
Because you are absorbing a lot of stuff. Did it take the burnout for you to realise this? To realise that you needed all of these things put in place?
Yeah, there's nothing like ignoring a few signs and then your body gives you no option to do. It's like you actually need to care for yourself now. I think it's one of those things as you get older, and the patterns that I have of, I grew up in a wonderful family, but work hard, and that was, something that you do, but to realise actually having time off and having space is really important in the work that I do. And it's taken me a long time to know that, and I still need to remind myself of that, but that's part of life, I guess. Yeah. And it's about awareness and putting boundaries in and saying no to things, because I tend to take too much on.
Because you would be, because you're such a helping, caring person. And like you say, when you sense that others are in distress or they need you, it's really hard to put a boundary around yourself and stop and go, no, actually, today I can't do this. I'm in overwhelm myself. I don't need to be doing that for you.
Yeah, so more and more, and I have learnt to do that, just to go, I just don't have capacity to do that right now. Yes, we can go and do something, but I'm not doing counselling with my friends. I can't do heavy today. I need to do light.
Fantastic.
So that's something that's coming into my life more, is how do I hold the world lightly as well, because I spend so much time in depth.
Yes. Yeah. You would be amazing to work with. So the other thing that I want to ask is, we discussed the other day that you'd done the Myers-Briggs before in your life, and we just went over it again about you being an INFP. And I was just wondering whether there's anything in that, hearing it a second time round, whether there was any relationship that you did have with that personality type that you hadn't really thought about before, and that in reflection after the other day you realised was really you, in that sense.
Yeah, I think one of the pivotal moments, Kate, was when you gave me the book.
Right.
So Kate gave me a book, and then she said, and I understand that you're not going to return it to me straight away. That was so affirming. I felt so heard and seen in that moment, because it was like, yeah, I beat myself up massively for not being supposedly organised, and, things flow a bit fluidly and all that type of thing. But what that actually did was go, oh, that's just part of who I am. That's my personality, and I don't need to apologise for that. I probably need to return things back more quickly, and, meet deadlines and do all those things. But when I was actually looking at the profile, it was really affirming, and I know that, we're not black and white stuck in that profile, because there were some parts of it I was like, oh yeah, sometimes it's like that, but not all the time. And yeah, so I think for me it was weirdly really affirming. And that I don't have to apologize for some of these traits. It's just, how do I navigate them, and how do I bring people into my life that have other traits that I would like to embrace and get help with it, or I don't have to suddenly become an admin guru.
No.
Like, that's just not who I am. I'm creative, and so it's okay, and I don't have to apologize for that. But how do I live the world and run a business and do all the things that I need to do at the same time?
Oh, that is really great to hear, and it's the truth, because also once I know people and I know what personality type they are, then I've got a whole headset around how you operate and what you are, and the fantastic things that are around you. And look, Belle and I do share that last minute, as Doug's podcast helper has discovered this morning, a little bit last minute and a little bit rushed. But we're here, and it's all good, and we're podcasting away. But it is that understanding, and when people are, other people that know you have that understanding about you, it's not a bad thing. It's just who you are, and it's okay, and you manage it. And in your business life, you manage to get some of those people who are going to be on time and going to be doing that because that's what you need, but you're not that person. So it's really important to embrace the other people who are different from you, so you can utilise their strengths, but let them know what your strengths are, and that you're not always going to be on time. You're not going to get that book back. I totally understand. I've borrowed books from my mother for about 20 years and never returned them. She'll say, "Oh dear, remember that book?" It's like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
It's home on the shelf.
I think the other thing, Kate, is that it's been a nice reminder that, people in my world do have different personalities. So, for instance, I've got a friend, and if we go out to go for dinner, I'm a bit like, we'll just go there and we'll just sort of see what happens. Where she's like, where are we going? What time are we meeting? What food do they have? And I get a bit overwhelmed with that. But also, it's like, that's who she is too. And so it's about navigating that together. And I have tried really hard, and I'm doing it a bit better, being on time and being more organised and things like that. But I don't know, sometimes I'll be like, I had 2 hours spare to get this ready, and I'm still doing the last minute power surge. And it's like, actually, now I'll be just going, well, that's just how I operate. And that's okay.
And usually you get through. And if you make a major mistake around it, you don't do that again. But those people for dinner, the one good part about them is when you rock up for dinner these days, the restaurants are so busy you can't get in. So they're really handy because they actually book in advance.
Yeah.
And when you get there is a booking. Like I've found that I do ask people not to book me too far ahead because it stresses me to be booked too far ahead. Yeah. But if it's a week in advance or maybe 10 days, I can go with that because you see, Belle and I might change our mind in the meantime. We might not actually want to go out to dinner on that night.
Yeah, or the favourite restaurant we go to, sometimes we have to get takeaway and sit in the park. But that's okay.
And that's all right. That's right with us. It's not all right with them, but it's all right with us. And we're quite happy with that. That's not a problem at all. Look, thank you for talking to us and sharing with us all of your deep insights. And look, you have an amazing knowledge about people and yourself. And it's really great to hear what art therapy is. I think moving forward, even I'm going to walk away from this today and I'm going to be recommending what you do to other people because now I know. And I hope that the listener that is listening today is going to have a different headset on this. And perhaps if they need help or even if they don't need help, look into this type of process as something that they can do to just find out a little bit more about themselves and possibly the problems that they have.
Yeah, definitely. And creativity is a part of being human, especially for me. But, it is something that people resonate with and can reflect with. So thank you for having a chat with me.
Your life is what you make of it. You're responsible for your happiness. Love those that you let in and trust, and let go of the people that don't deserve your attention. Choose your dreams and make your own decisions based on your own happiness. Your life is your journey. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Personalities, Parenting and Partners. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my newly launched book, Who is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.